I'm Teisha Bader, and in the news, Hurricane Harvey, the devastating storm that has battered the greater Houston area, leaving at least 18 people dead, tens of thousands of homes destroyed, and thousands of people still awaiting rescue amidst massive floodwaters. Harvey, now a tropical storm, continues to ravage the Gulf Coast, hitting parts of Louisiana as well as Texas. Joel Dinkin is the executive vice president of the Evelyn Rubenstein Jewish Community Center of Houston. He joins us now over the phone to share with us how the Jewish community has been impacted by this natural disaster and how the JCC is coming to the aid of so many. Thank you, Joel, for speaking with us here on JBS in what I am sure is a very busy and difficult time. We truly appreciate it.
You're welcome.
So firstly, we've all, of course, been watching the news coverage of this storm and are just truly shocked and so saddened at the heartbreaking images that we've seen of the unbelievable flooding and the dramatic rescues that have been made. Can you give us an idea of what the last few days have been like for you personally and also as a leader of the Jewish community there?
Sure. I'll go back a little bit in time. The weather forecast, and, we live in the Gulf Coast area, they begin to watch storm patterns early on. And so there was a sense probably last Tuesday or Wednesday that Harvey was going to be impacting the Gulf Coast, but it wasn't sure where. And you began to see a rush on to grocery stores and gas stations, and even at one point, I think Thursday, you could drive by gas stations and people had signs up that said out of gas, and the grocery stores, the lines were out the door. This rain started Friday night, and then, interesting enough, at least in our community, in the community where the center is in the southwest part of Houston, we had very little rain on Saturday, thinking that it was, that it was not going to hit, it was not going to strike Houston, and there was sort of this sense of maybe a relief that it wasn't going to happen. In the late Saturday afternoon, Saturday evening, the rain just started, and it just continued for days on end. In fact, so it's Wednesday afternoon, and today's the first day we haven't had any rain since last Thursday. Houston is the fourth largest city in the country, so the devastation is widespread. So in past, we've had two floods, a Memorial Day flood in 2015, and what we've referred to as a Tax Day flood in 2016, which impacted the Jewish community and neighborhoods in and around the JCC. This particular hurricane has been widespread, and even as we speak, I'm aware my CFO, who lives 15, 20 minutes from the center, was evacuated by a boat this morning because of the rising tide and river in her area. So it's just widespread, and the evacuation's continuing, and the devastation is just much greater than I think anybody had ever imagined. As far as the JCC is concerned, we closed Friday afternoon, and we remain closed all day Saturday, and we continue to be closed. We have some significant damage in parts of our building, but having said that, I stepped inside for a couple minutes to participate in the interview. But at the back part of the campus right now, we had started this morning, and we have now become a distribution site for families and individuals in need to pick up, to drop off donations of water and packing supplies and cleaning supplies and garbage bags and et cetera. And then people are now coming to pick things up as well. We have shipments of boxes coming in for people to be able to pack up supplies, home goods, et cetera. We getting calls, I just had a call earlier from a truck that's on its way from Dallas, another from San Antonio. So the outpouring of support has been overwhelming. Damage in the Jewish community and its facilities. We had a conference call yesterday with rabbis and community leaders, and a number of the major synagogues and have been hit significantly, and others were not touched. But it's somewhat spread out in terms of the magnitude within the Jewish community. But we are mobilizing efforts, and unfortunately, Teisha, we've had some practice on this. Because of the impact from the Memorial Day floods in 15 and the Tax Day floods in 16, that we're able to sort of move a little quicker because we've sort of been there, done that.
Right, and I want to get back to those relief efforts that you're organizing that are so important in a moment. So go back a bit. You were talking about some people evacuated, some did not. It seemed that there was sort of this false sense of security and that it wasn't clear where exactly the storm would hit. So how did those evacuation orders, or were there evacuation orders that were issued, and how did that work?
Yeah, there were no evacuation orders that were issued, at least for the Houston area. The evacuation orders were mostly in the Corpus Christi Rockport area where Hurricane Harvey came ashore. I guess it was sometime late Friday. But there's been no evacuation orders within the city of Houston. I've known many people who chose to leave and left earlier, Thursday or Friday, and continue to not be here. The most evacuations were in the further south of Houston along the Gulf Coast. I see.
And, there are stories, of course, of, personal stories of what people have been through. On Ynet, the Yediot website from Israel, there was a story I read today of an Israeli man living in Houston who talked about how his service in the IDF kind of kicked in, and he went out with a kayak and some friends and rescued some senior citizens from their homes, which is just unbelievable. Another Israeli woman said she and her family were trapped in their home. They had called emergency services, but in the meantime, the waters were rising, and she said through the help of a local rabbi and social media, she was rescued by civilians. And then 16 hours later, I think it was, she heard back from emergency services just because they're obviously inundated. What are some of the stories?
There are many stories like that of people who are on, either if they have a two-story home, ended up, staying on the second story of their home until they were able to be evacuated, or some people in one-story houses ended up on the roof and waited for boats to come, or in some cases, helicopters, the Coast Guard, and other support services. And that's still happening. I mean, even as late as last night, watching the news, you still see that happening quite a bit. And this morning, my CFO was 25 minutes from the center. She had to get on a boat with her family to leave, and she didn't have any water. But the accumulation of water has forced these kind of evacuations. They said on the news last night that the average area of Houston has received 51 inches of rain since in the last 5 days, and they somehow calculated that 51 inches of rain would be the equivalent of 600 feet of snow. So you can just sort of put it into some kind of perspective in some kind of magnitude.
That is truly, I can't even wrap my head around that, honestly.
And so and so they also had a graph. I saw on the news last night. I don't keep wanting to watch the news, but it was watched a little bit last night. So they had a graph listing the rainfall from all the prior storms that have come through Houston, and unfortunately Harvey is at the top of the list. They compared it to Hurricane Allison a number of years ago, but Harvey has surpassed those rainfall totals within this time period.
Now, what have you seen, Joel, as far as are people already coming to the JCC to get supplies, or are your phones ringing?
They are, and it started this morning, and we actually the roads around the JCC were not passable until probably yesterday afternoon. So we were not able to mobilize our relief efforts. So we've been able. So I guess the image is I'll also share with you as I sit in my office right now taking this call. The back part of our campus is where the relief efforts are taking place. The front part of the campus, I look out my window, and where I used to look out the window, and there was a playground, which is probably about 1,500 square feet size of a playground, which goes from the ground level below to a level below us, one level down, is completely filled with water, and I see playground equipment floating to the top. So here's the image of, and if I look out my window across the street, the house across the street, what you see in front of the house is carpet and furniture and chairs and boxes and stuff that they've already started to pull out of their house because it was all wet and mildew. So here in the front of the building, we see this tremendous amount of water that's in front of my building and sitting in this playground that's now being pumped out as we speak. Across the street is a house with debris and damaged clothing and furniture, etc. And 300-400 yards behind me is volunteers who are dropping off materials and supplies, volunteers who are supporting people. I just got a call before I took this call. A truck is on the way with a trailer truck full of boxes. So it's that's the dynamic that's taking place right now in the city is relief efforts that are underway while there's also remediation that's taking place.
And what are you seeing? What are you hearing from the people who are coming to get supplies or are reaching out to the JCC? What is what is your take on how they're feeling, what they're experiencing right now?
Again, it's one of in many cases it's one of disbelief. It's like, oh my, here we are again. One, two, and I think what we're seeing quite a bit of, Teisha, is people who are coming here now are coming who are not affected and are supporting friends and family by coming here and picking up supplies.
That's really
so that's sort of that dynamic that's happening in that dynamic. But I think people are just sort of in shock, and I think they're just going into this remediation mode. I've got to get my house, I've got to get the water out. I've got to get out the wet carpet and get rid of the drywall that's wet to avoid further problems and mold, et cetera. And that's what you see going on right now, and making sure that people are sound and safe. And then from there, people will begin to figure out how to put things back into place. We've transitioned some of our programs off-site. All the schools are closed this week, and we've put a partnership together with a local congregation and a URJ camp. Great Family Camp is now running a camp for children starting tomorrow, so that the kids have a place to be while parents are focusing on the remediation efforts in their homes.
You spoke about people coming to help their friends and neighbors, and this has been said many times before, but I think it bears repeating. Sometimes in these really, really difficult situations, in these challenging situations, you see the best of people. You see these people who rise to the occasion and really the best of humanity in some of the worst of times. How are you experiencing that?
Very much the case. We see, I have teenagers out here today, just individuals of all ages who are, who were not affected by this storm and the hurricane, who have come to lend them a hand, and just people coming in and out who are not people typically would see at the JCC, who recognize that as a community center that they know that there's something going on that they can make a difference, and that's so we're that's if there's any silver lining, excuse me, if there's any silver lining, it's the opportunity to see people come together and support each other.
And we actually mentioned in our daily news update that we do here on JBS today about some Israeli organizations that have sent volunteers. Israel Aid and Israel Rescue Relief have sent volunteers to your area. Have you seen or heard of them, or are you in touch with them?
I know Israel Aid's on its way. I know Nechama is on its way. I know there's a national initiative taking place with JFNA in terms of fundraising. I also know there's a national initiative with the JCC Association to connect JCCs across the country and providing support through a gift card initiatives that we're able to put gift cards right in the hands of people in need and allow them to go out and buy what they need to buy to address their clothes, property, food, whatever the case may be. So there's just an outpouring of support that's just sort of happening, and some of it is, it's overwhelming in trying to manage all the different moving pieces and parts. But the more that everybody is certainly encouraged and welcome to come, and I mean, this is a city of over 4 million people, so there's a tremendous amount of devastation and a continued growing need for support at all levels. The Jewish community is clearly taking the lead on that. Yesterday, there was a conference call with national organizations across the country, and which we are part of as well as here on the ground to support. And RJ is a United Way agency, and United Way locally here is taking on an initiative as well, and I know United Way nationally, internationally is doing the same. My wife happens to work for the YMCA, and the National YMCA movement is stepping in. they opened up, the city opened up another shelter last night because of the first shelter, which at the convention center was at capacity, and now opened up a second shelter. So it's this is not I guess the analogy is this is not a 5K run here. This is a marathon, and we're just sort of in that first few miles here of that analogy of a race. But it's going to be a long road ahead of us.
I'm sure. And as you mentioned, Federation is very involved, Jewish Federations of North America, as well as your local federation there. I know B'nai B'rith International, the American Jewish Committee, a number of Jewish organizations have set up ways that people can make donations and reach out and help those impacted by this crisis. And it's important to note that people are doing so, and I'm so glad to hear that. You know, Joel, in this situation, I know it's interesting. There are a lot of people that aren't used to asking for help or receiving help, for that matter, and go about taking care of things on their own. But in this situation, people are truly helpless and truly are relying on the assistance of others, whether that's comfortable for them or not.
I think what's happened in some regard, is there are people who are just driving up and down streets and knocking on doors.
Really.
So we've seen that start. In fact, I got a text from an acquaintance about an hour ago, and how could she help? And so we see that as well as there's people just going door on door and knocking on and seeing the volunteer. And I think so. You see quite a bit of that in the neighborhoods as well.
Joel, I know you're not originally from Texas. Tell us a bit about the Jewish community there in Houston and what you've found over the years being there.
I'm not originally from Texas. I'm originally from Pittsburgh, but I've spent 38 years working in the JCC world, of which 22 of them have been here in Houston. And Houston is a very, very, very friendly, warm city, and also the Jewish community as well. It's a community that just has open arms, not just in time of crisis, just on an everyday kind of existence.
And of course, the assistance that you at the JCC are offering is for the entire community. And what are some of the things that you have there for people to be able to pick up and take with them?
So right now, there's a couple of dynamics here, I think, that are in play, Teisha. One is the material things that people are to pick up, so boxes and cleaning supplies and garbage bags and face masks, work gloves, brooms, mops, all the things that you can think about that you would want to clean up a mess in your house. But there's another layer here of what this is all about, and that's for people to come and see other people. So either people who have been affected by this to be together with those that have been affected by it, and go through and get a hug and some comfort and support. We also have on site here professional mental health staff from the Jewish Family Service, so that there's somebody that shows up and needs not just needs a set of supplies, but also wants to talk to somebody. The mental health professionals are on site as well. So part of this is just being a part of a community, and being a part of something, and knowing that you're coming to the Jewish Community Center and wish to do that. We're also working on trying to remobilize our programs and facilities, because people again want to connect to their community through their neighborhood, and the JCC is the place to do it. So as we're giving out supplies and as we're going through mediation, and I don't want to say because it's fitness or aquatics, but our gymnastics programs, etc. But we are figuring out how we're going to re-engage our programs, not because they're not from any kind of financial driven mode, or it's just really as a way for people to connect to each other, and knowing that the community center is still here and that they can participate, and that life is it's a mess right now. But at some point, we're going to get back into a place where we feel comfortable and want to be a part of something, and we can connect it to the community. And so that's so there's there's sort of multiple strategies in place. The other piece is we have an early childhood education facility right now that serves 225 children between the ages of 6 weeks and 5 years old. and took in some water. And we've got to get that up and running or figure out what our options are going to be, because parents depend on us because they need their early childhood education and child care in order to be able to work. So there's a lot of different dynamics that's sort of at play here as we move forward.
And I think that's so important that you touched on that point, Joel, as far as human connection and people coming in and just needing a hug, just needing someone to maybe listen to them for a few minutes, and then, of course, get the supplies they need. But that human connection and the emotional support is so incredibly important.
Yeah.
And I know
and that's part of it.
I'm sorry?
And that's part of it of what we're trying to do here.
Yes, absolutely. And what is it, that we're watching the images on the news, and truly, I hope that the community there knows how much we're all thinking of you and sending our absolute best wishes. What would you like to leave us with, people who are watching this from all over the United States and all over the world for that matter? What would you like to impart with us?
What I'd like to leave, I guess, in part, is that Houston's is a vibrant city, and the vibrancy and support that people have for each other will serve as a foundation to sort of get past this and beyond this and move forward. That's the message that I would like to leave. One, I think the second is to thank everybody on a local, national, international basis for the reaching out for their support, whether it's sending kind wishes through emails, social media, making contributions, sending supplies. That sense of warmth and support has just been overwhelming. And that's, I guess, those are messages I probably would leave with you.
Well, Joel, we truly wish you and all of those impacted by this devastating storm the absolute best. We hope that rescue efforts are successful, that as many people can be helped in this situation, and that we only hear better news. And again, as you said, I understand this is a long, there's still recovery efforts. People are still being rescued, and then there's an entire process of recovery and moving on from this. It's going to be a long haul, so we will continue to wish you the best. And
thank you.
Please update us as things hopefully progress there at the JCC and in the community as a whole.
Be happy to. Thank you, and appreciate your taking the time to understand the magnitude of the devastation and what's happening within the Jewish community here in Houston.
Thank you so much, Joel, and please pass on our very best wishes to the entire community there, and they are in our thoughts.
Thank you very much.
Joel Dinkin is the Executive Vice President of the Evelyn Rubenstein Jewish Community Center in Houston, and we truly thank him for taking some time to speak with us on JBS and giving us a glimpse of what the realities are on the ground there in Houston. And we, again, wish all those impacted by this truly devastating disaster the very best. And thank you, as always, to our Director, Sloan Copeland, Production Coordinator, Serge Goldberg, JBS Associate Director, Dara Golub, our producer, Carol Lilienthal, and Editor, Jonathan McDevitt. I'm Teisha Bader on this edition of In the News.